Hi, this is Stefan Gonick, International Love Coach and EFT practitioner from findingloveyouwant.com. Welcome to Love Talk Q&A, the place to be to get your questions answered about finding and keeping the love of your life. In this episode, I'm going to answer a very common question I get over and over again, which is, how do I meet people? How do I find people to meet, to date? Well, it's a very understandable question. I mean, years ago, like decades ago, this used to be a lot easier to do. People used to socialize with each other a lot more. Friends would get together and have group activities, and lots of times, you'd be getting together with some certain friends, and they would invite other friends, and there was a lot of opportunities for mixing and meeting different people, and people had lots more parties and all that kind of stuff. There was way more opportunities in the past to easily, have people to meet than there are now. Nowadays, we live in cities, we're really busy, there's a lot more isolation between people, and it really is much harder to meet people. So it makes sense for this question to keep coming up, which is, how do I meet people? It's much harder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about 3 different methods for meeting people. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of each, and I'm going to end with my recommendation. So the first thing that a lot of people think of when they think of, okay, how can I meet people to date, is they think about dating sites. Makes sense? I mean, we think on the surface, it really seems like this wonderful resource, which is, I live in the city, I can go to a dating site and do a search, and there's like all these profiles of people that I wouldn't normally ever have any way of meeting, and here they all are. And these are all people that are single, they're looking for somebody. So I was like, okay, wow, this is good. This is a great resource. But when you think about how it actually works to use them, and I myself used them for many years, so I speak from, fortunately, a lot of experience, is using dating sites can be an endless time and energy sink. I remember I used to be a member of 3 different dating sites, and I would spend endless hours on these sites. I'd be going, I'd do a search and I'd get hundreds of profiles, and I'd be going through them one by one and reading them, saving the ones that seemed interesting to my favorites, and then after making a pass through hundreds of profiles, I'd go back to my favorites and I'd read each one again. And if the person seemed really interesting, then okay, I would send her an email. She may or may not respond. If she didn't, that'd be disappointing, but at least that's done. If she responds favorably, then we would sort of interact through emails for a while, and then eventually we would decide, okay, let's have a phone date as sort of the next level of interaction, and then we'd have our first phone date, and if that didn't go well, it's like, all right, well, that one's over. But if it does go well, we might start talking on the phone for a while. Maybe it goes really well, and we have feels like this amazing connection on the phone, and have these really wonderful conversations. So now it's like I'm all excited about meeting this person in person. And so we finally arrange our date, and we've had such, wonderful phone conversations that my hopes are really high. And it's like, oh God, this could be it. She could be the one even, maybe, it's like, at least I'm really excited to meet her. And then the first minute, 30 seconds maybe even, I could tell there's just no chemistry and no possibility for chemistry. And it's not that, whether or not I find her attractive, is I probably had pictures in their profile and like, yeah, she's pretty. She looks plenty good enough looking, but there's just that chemistry thing. It just wasn't there. And then, if you had a tea date, that might be an hour you have to spend with that person. If you had dinners, it might be an hour and a half, 2 hours. It's hard to easily extricate yourself when there's no interest there. So, I try to have a pleasant time, but it's like, okay, then, back, and then, I'd be interacting with lots of people, and I'd be going date after date after date. And it's really easy to consume a ton of time and energy. And I'd say, that's the biggest danger with using dating sites, is to let it consume all of your free time and energy. We can easily do. It did for me. So, it's not that you cannot succeed with using dating sites. In the many years I used dating sites, I had 2 relationships from doing that. So it wasn't, looking back, it was not a highly successful venue for me. But there are certainly people who, do meet people through a dating site and fall in love and get married. It does happen. So I understand it's a hard resource to totally disregard. So what I would recommend in the case of using dating sites is that you come up with a time limit. You might say, okay, I'll spend 5 hours a week using dating sites, which is including the dates. So that you still have time and energy left over for some of these other ways to meet people that may be more effective and better. So that brings me to a second approach. And this one, some of you may know about it, and some of you may not know anything about it. And some of you have heard of it, may have seen some very funny parodies about it on TV or movies. And that is something called speed dating. So speed dating is something you can actually think of as almost the exact opposite of a dating site. So when you think about using a dating site, when you look at somebody's profile, you get all this information up front about this person, right? You see their pictures, you see like this, they may have written some essays, there's various questions about interests, little checkboxes, all this other stuff. You get a ton of information and data about the person right up front. The only thing you don't know is whether or not there's going to be any chemistry or connection when you finally meet them. And often there isn't. So with speed dating, like I say, it's sort of the opposite. You show up to an event sight unseen. You don't know who's going to be there. In fact, it's potluck every time. So it's usually a different mix of people each time at these events. You don't know anything about them. You sit down at tables and you rotate through a series of short dates that usually last somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes. That's why they call it speed dating. And the thing about it is, the thing you do get from it is that you can usually tell within the first 1 or 2 minutes of sitting and talking with somebody whether or not there's any sense of connection or chemistry between the two of you. And that's all you really need to know in those 5 to 7 minutes, because then you mark in your dating sheet that you're interested in the person. If they're interested back, then you get each other's contact information, so it's nice and safe and no pressure. And then you're able to contact each other after the event and go on dates. So the nice thing about speed dating is it's so much more time efficient than dating sites. You show up for an evening, might last a couple hours. You might have somewhere around 10 to 20 dates with these people. And at the end of the night, either maybe there was nobody you're interested in and you go back a second time and then there are, or maybe there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people that you find really interesting. Certainly enough to say, yeah, I would love to see this person again and get to know them more. And it's only the people you feel a mutual chemistry and connection with. So you're quickly weeding out everything else. So in that sense, I like it better than dating sites. So that part is good. Now the problem with both those methods, dating sites and speed dating, is that they're both very unnatural settings. They're both very contrived circumstances. It's not a natural way to meet people when you think about it. Natural way to meet people is you're doing something that you would normally do, and you happen to meet somebody, interact with them, and you start to feel something between the two of you. But you didn't go there to try to meet somebody, right? So with both dating sites and speed dating, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, I'm single, you're single, let's get together and check each other out and see if we might be interested in each other. Very contrived, very unnatural. So it makes it harder to be yourself. It's harder to let things develop naturally. It tends to put a lot of pressure on things, and it can be awkward and uncomfortable. So to me, the best way to meet somebody is when you're doing an activity that you love doing and you meet them that way. So for instance, in my case, I love partner dance, and I have for over 30 years now. And so I would go to partner dancing once or twice a week. Actually, in my heyday, 3 times a week because I loved it so much. But in any case, I went there because I loved doing it. I started with ballroom dancing, and then I went to swing dancing, and then salsa dancing and all that kind of stuff. And I went there week after week because I loved the activity itself. And everybody else who went there because they loved partner dancing, not because they were there trying to meet people. Not to say they weren't open to meeting people, but that was not their primary reason for going. Their primary reason for going was the activity itself. But the wonderful thing about it was that here was a big group of people who were there because they loved doing the same activity. And they were having fun doing the activity together. And it became a very relaxed, natural, conducive environment for meeting people. So in my case, most of my girlfriends over the whole course of my adult life, I actually met dancing. Okay? Even though I tried using dating sites and stuff, because I was like, impatient. I wanted to do it faster. But ultimately, that's where I met, nearly every girlfriend, including my wife. So I am very grateful to that. So, and by the way, this kind of dancing is very different than a bar with a dance, because again, that's back to the sort of meat market thing, and it's again, it's that sort of unnatural environment. Partner dancing is people who love dancing, and they're there because they love dancing. Now, I am not in any way suggesting that you should take a partner dancing, though, I love it. It's a fun thing to do. But the thing to take away from this is to think of an activity that you love doing, that you have a great time doing. Because when you think about it, when you're doing something you love doing, you are in your best frame of mind. You are feeling good. You're enjoying yourself. You are involved in something that, that's super fun or interesting or inspiring or something. It sort of brings out the best in you. And if you imagine this, what if you're with a whole group of people at the same time also doing the same activity that they also love doing? So right off the bat, look, you have this shared interest in this activity. So that's already a point of connection. Plus afterwards, once you get involved, isn't it nice to be able to continue doing that activity together? Now, so what I would recommend you do is you think of an activity you love doing. Make sure to pick one that the gender that you're interested in also loves doing that activity. It doesn't make sense to pick one that where the gender you're interested in is never going to be there in this group. And look for a way to do that activity in a group setting. Now, we have a wonderful online resource for doing exactly that. So, for instance, there's a site called meetup.com. That's meetup.com, meetup.com. And what meetups are group events. There are people who can sign up for Meetup and create their own meetups under every topic you can possibly imagine. So for instance, they have meetups for people who love hiking, meetups for people who love bike riding, meetups for people who like going to see movies, meetups for people who like wine, any interest you can think of, hundreds, thousands of interests, they have meetups for it. And joining meetup.com is free. Participating in meetup get-togethers is free. The only time you ever have to pay is if you want to be somebody who creates your own meetups. Then you have to pay them. It sounds like I may be working for Meetup. I am not. But I have made wonderful use of Meetup in my life. So that's what I encourage people to do, is to find group activities. Think of an activity you love doing and finding ways to do it in a group setting. Meetup.com is one wonderful resource for doing it. It's really easy. But it's not the only one. There's lots of clubs and organizations that have regular activities that you can join as well. But to me, that's the best way, because it's a much more natural setting. You're coming week after week, seeing the same people over and over again. There'll be opportunities over time to go in and out of connection until you connect with somebody enough times that you go, wow, you know what? I'm really enjoying talking to you. Maybe we can get together outside of this group activity in addition. That's what I did with my wife. I said, would you like to get together outside of the dance floor? And she said yes. So anyway, that's what I recommend. All three methods are valid, but I like the natural ones the best. So thank you very much for that question, and I'll catch you in the next one. Did you like this video? If so, click on the like button below, subscribe to this channel, and spread the love to your friends. And if you have questions about your love life, please submit them in the comments below, and your question just might appear in an upcoming episode of Love Talk Q&A. Also, if you would like to understand the 3 key blocks to finding love and how to attract your soulmate now, sign up for the free Finding the Love You Want mini course. Well, thank you for hanging out with me, and remember, no matter how long you've been trying, you really can have the life and love you long for. This is Stefan Gonick, International Love Coach from FindingTheLoveYouWant.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time on Love Talk Q&A.